Yes, so good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first of the tete-a-tetes that all of us at the Haibun Gallery have put together. I'm delighted to welcome, Sorry, I think I was running parallel tracks there. So delighted to welcome here my co-editors, Akhila and Shalini Pataviraman. And just to give you a gist of, if you could just stop the sharing for a moment so that we have a look at everybody who is here. May I just request Shalini and Akhila to just stop the sharing for a moment? The screen share. Yeah, thank you so much. So when Kala came up with the idea of starting the Haibun Gallery sometime in December, and she invited us on board, we wondered about the best way to go about doing it, because the art of Haibuneering is so very difficult. It's straddling multiple worlds of haikai writing. It's an art where you straddle not just the art of writing haiku, but also to interweave prose and do it in the manner that is most justifiable to this form of Haibun. And when we were discussing it, we wondered about the best way to go about it. And we thought we would start by showcasing some of the stalwarts, some from India to begin with. And naturally, these are the names that came to mind. We wanted to start with by paying tribute to two very, very eminent Haijin, whom many of us have been very lucky to have been mentored by, Anjali Diodar and Johannes, who are unfortunately not with us today. Anjali, so we began with a series where we presented 3 weeks of Haibun by each of them, and then threw open the forum for prompts that Haibuniers could be inspired from and start writing. And what's come about is it resulted in 6 beautiful issues of Haiku Katha where we were able to choose. And following Anjali and Johannes, we wanted to have Kala, of course, Gitanjali and Paresh showcased as well. Why? The question was because in their own capacities, all these 5 Haijin have mentored a whole legion of Haibuneers. And we thought the best way for us to become better at the art was to listen to them and to learn from them, if I may, on how better we can be at this art, right? So without further ado, may I pass this on to the leading co-hosts for today, Shalini and Akhila. Over to you. They've had some amazing questions, and I think at the end we will be throwing it open to the audience for questions on how much we can learn from these 3 very, very eminent Haijin we have with us, Haibuneers. So on that note, welcome again, and over to you, Shalini and Akhila. I'm going to go on mute and disappear from the screen, but I'm going to be very much around. Yes. And please keep your just a couple of housekeeping tips. Just keep your microphones on mute, please, because there does tend to be a lot of disturbance, and we don't want this to be disturbed during the proceedings. Yes, over to you, Shalini and Akhila.
Thank you very much, Shobna, for that lovely introduction. So without any delay, we shall get started. Welcome Gitanjali, Paresh and Kala, and all our lovely guests to this discussion. our first question is obviously to do with form and aesthetics. So my question would be, how do you define form of the Haibun, and how do you define the aesthetics that guide the form? So can I please welcome Gitanjali to start first, and then we can go to Kala and to Paresh next. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. Good evening, everyone. Maybe it's, yeah, good morning for some. I'm not sure, but yeah. Right. Thank you for that question about form in Haibun and also about aesthetics. Before that, I just want to kind of, if I may, make a small correction in what in that introduction, where I think we were described as stalwarts. I think Kala and Paresh fit the bill, but I certainly am not a stalwart. Neither am I eminent. Perhaps, like a good friend said, imminent, but not eminent. Right? Okay. So about form and Haibun, I'm just going to share what I learned from a few people by reading some very good Haijin, as well as by reading a couple of books, which I recommend as compulsory reading for whoever wants to write Haibun. And that would be the books by Anjali, edited by the late Dr. Anjali Deodar. She was really a master of the form. And she has put together the Journeys series, out of which, when you read the essays in that, just read the preface and the introductory essays, and that itself kind of gives everyone a good idea of what Haibun can be. Having said that, I'm going to probably quote Jeffrey Woodward's essay in the 2017 Journeys, where he says that he kind of categorizes the form to physically into various things. You could have prose followed by a haiku, and then he explains. He calls it the preface, the prefatory kind of Haibun. He says you could start with haiku and then go on to prose. There are various, or you can have haiku, prose, haiku, kind of an envelope technique, or now also Haibun without a haiku, and yeah, so on. And you could have verse with haiku. So it's very difficult to talk about a form of Haibun, because I think it's the one that is most open to experimentation of all the haikai forms, I think, because finally, it's just what you do with the form, right? So, well, I recommend that you read these books, and yeah, in Japan, I can also say in Japan that though it was kind of this late 1600s, you had Haibun being written. It was not called that, but even now, many Japanese people who write Haibun refer to it as zuihitsu or zuiso, and not Haibun per se, right? And again, I'm not. This is not something that I'm saying. It's from the Cottage of Visions, and the essay, I think, is just a 2-page essay, but it's a beautiful, just 2-page thing called A Potted History of Haibun, which is a postscript to the book, actually. And that's by Hisashi Miyazaki-sama, right? So where he says that, you could probably have a haiku or not, but that's not, it has to be haikai. And there again, you're going into a deeper definition of what is haikai, right? Yeah, thank you. I'd like to hear what the others have to say about this as well. So, because, yeah, I think we all have our varying styles. Thank you. Thank you for that, Shalini.
Kala, would you like to share your views?
Kala, you have to unmute.
Kala, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Geetanjali, that was a beautiful introduction. Yes, it's such a dynamic form. And so I think just like haiku, putting it into a shell or giving it a definition is not going to work. But when I came into haiku, that was almost 15 years back, people were talking about Basho's The Narrow Road to the Deep North. And it was travelogue. It was travel pieces written by Basho. And they said that it was after he sold his home and he started traveling deep north. And he met so many poets and he was collecting. It was all about the places. And then they did have some beautiful haiku. So now, of course, we have got away from the travelogue. We have got away from, yes, there are many pieces about travel, but it is other things also here, other stories that can be told. I had a beautiful quote which I read. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but it is Nobuyuki Yuasa. And he says, in good Haibun, the prose deepens the understanding of poetry, and the poetry gives greater energy to the prose. The relationship is that, like between the moon and the earth, each makes the other more beautiful. That was in Blitz Spirit, September 2000, and I think it still holds some truth about it. Now, when I came into Haibun in 2005, that seems like a long, long back, and it makes me look ancient, but we were told to be strict about haikai prose. So haikai prose is something that, unless you know haikai, you're not going to know what haikai prose is. We can just say it's brief, it's concise, it's all these things. But I think the first requisite is that the person knows haiku before you get into Haibun. Whereas now you have people coming from all streams trying Haibun. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's not at all. We want more people trying Haibun. But the haikai, the haiku at the end seems weak, or the haiku, wherever they put it, seems weak. It is not a standalone. Yes, I do go by the standalone haiku, and it is not standalone, and that sort of puts me off when I read something very flashy and something very flowery, and then it is not to the haikai spirit or the haikai prose, and then the haiku also falls weak. So that is not something we want, and that is what we have been told now the last 10, 15 years that has been going on. And yes, over the years, I have learned what Haibun is, of course, from reading other people's Haibun and reading essays and prose, I mean, the print books and things like that. But I feel the Triveni of Haibun is something that I would like to stress upon. Triveni, as you know, is the confluence of the Ganga, the Yamuna, and the Saraswati, the mystical Saraswati, they say, because she's underground. And in Sangam, I remember going there, and the boatman takes us there, and then he says, now just dip in, and then you'll feel it. And so it was an experience to know that it is the coming together of three major rivers. So I would say the Triveni of Haibun is, the Ganga would be maybe the prose, the Yamuna would be the haiku, and the mystical river Saraswati would be the title. In 2005, I'm telling you, we were not particular about the title. We could write anything with the title. We can play around with it, or we could have the last line of the haiku as a title and things like that. But over the years, in the last 15 years, I see everyone insisting that the title should be good. And the title adds to the Haibun. So I would call it the Triveni of Haibun, the three things coming together. That's about it. Over to Paresh.
Thank you very much, Kala. Paresh, over to you. Now, you are a trailblazer when it comes to Haibun writing. You've used the form as it is, you've bent the rules, you've experimented with it. I would really, really love for you to explain how you feel Haibun works and what is it that you think are the aesthetics that one should look at.
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you, Shobna. Thank you, Akela. Thank you for having me here. Thank you to all the people who have joined us. I mean, 32 people joining for a Haibun, it's a dream come true sort of a thing. It's supposed to be a niche, you know, an art form practiced by few, loved by fewer. The only reason, Shalini, I agreed to do this conversation was because Geetanjali and Kala were here, and I thought that I won't have to say a word and not expose the chinks in my armor, right? So, and I would learn something sitting with them. That's the only reason that I agreed to do this. Geetanjali and Kala have very beautifully covered what Haibun traditionally would mean. I mean, anything that I add would just be repeating it. But I'll still add something. In 2016, when I came up with my second book, in the preface which I wrote to that book, I said that I've taken liberties with this delicate form of writing. In the past 6 years, the only thing that I have learned is that it is not a delicate form of writing. It's a very, very robust form of writing. Haibun in itself is so malleable, so pliable. It is open to so much. And the fact that there are people, yes, there are pitfalls. People come with almost zero haikai sensibilities, right? But if you look at each Haibun as an individual thing, you will see people who are coming from poetry falling short. But if you look at the macro picture, when you look at the larger canvas, what they're giving, what they're adding to this is the ability, the confidence, the opportunity for the rest of us to embrace something of that and bring it to this form and make it grow. Gendai Haibun, Gendai Haiku. Gendai means modern, simply. And Geetanjali, please correct me if I'm wrong, because everything I read is obviously translated. What do you bring to a form that is already 500 years old? Who brings something new to that form? That's a question that we don't really have a clear answer to. We all know the box, or that's where we start. Sometimes just moving out of the box is not enough for a form. Sometimes somebody coming in from outside and bringing something new to the box itself is necessary. As a form, I believe that is the coming to the question now. It's the interplay of the prose and the poetry that holds most interest to me. If the prose is a meandering path, the haiku are the bird calls. They allow you to explore that path in greater detail, to walk, to move to a place where you wouldn't have otherwise gone or explored. That's the interplay that is, but then what do you do with, as Geetanjali mentioned, what do you do with a Haibun which comes without a haiku? Where does the interplay of prose and poetry happen there? Does it happen between each word? Does it happen in the imagery which is haikai-like? Does it happen between particular images that you're putting in there together, side by side? There are no clear answers to any of this. The only thing one can hope to do is to keep studying it, and maybe once in a year come up with one decent haiku. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. A really interesting answer there. Of course, having said what you've just said, it brings me to my next question, which is to do with the essential skeleton of the form, which is link and shift. So, Parish, can I start with you, and we could just follow up with Kala and Geetanjali next then?
So you want me to talk about link and shift?
And
Okay.
what is its importance and how do you define it? Because there are always newcomers who come to the form, and although they have like a little idea of what you mean by it, it is kind of still very, very abstract. So if you could just give us some examples or share something of your work, and then we could take it from there. Whichever way you want to proceed, we'll welcome you to do that.
I was just thinking of that. So what I'll do is I'll read one of my Haibun, which I believe Akila should be having. It's one of those Haibun where the link and shift is really wide. Okay. But before that, I'll come to something which I think I heard from Kala in one of her lectures or in one of the talks that we were having. I think she was talking about haiku, but I believe the same principles can be applied, should be applied, are to be applied to Haibun as well. She likened the link and shift of the images to a spark plug. She said that, if the images are too wide apart, you won't get the spark. Just like in a motorbike, the distance between the plug and it has to be just right for the spark to actually be produced. If the images are too close, it again doesn't happen. But the reason I'm saying this, and I'm reading a Haibun which is totally different, is to say that for every rule, there are enough and equal numbers of places where you have broken those rules. The Haibun that I'll read is titled A Kitchen in the Valley. And I think on the face of it, there is absolutely no link and a lot of shift between the haiku and the prose, right? So if you can, if Akila can share it. A kitchen in the valley. Choose the cuts with care. It's an art lost on most except the bloodline of Ibrahim. The knives are soundless. Almost. And the flesh warm still in the cup of your palms. Then the ritual act of cleansing. Wash the meat 6 times through fresh water. Place it in a brass pot brimming with saffron milk. Knead the milk seeps into your veins. Sky full of emptiness, a finger frozen stiff on the trigger. Sky full of emptiness, a finger frozen stiff on the trigger, dry roast cinnamon, watch it curl in the heat of the pan, add cloves, cumin, fennel, brown cardamom, red chili, grind them all and mix with a bowl of curd, marinate. Leave it for an hour. Put the radio on and pour yourself a glass of wine. Only when Faiz breathes his last, place the marinade over the slow heat of charcoal. Equidistant from the barbed wires, your bunker and mine. Equidistant from the barbed wires, your bunker and mine, the rice comes next. When you rip open the twine of the sack, the scent of basmati washes over you like first rain, makes itself home in the shelves of your kitchen, into the folds of your skin. Measure 3 cups into a daichi. Pour twice the water, a spoonful of ghee, and a pinch of saffron. Split open 6 cloves over it all. Watch an ocean spume over the pot. There's one more haiku, so if you can shift down. Man's land the eye of the soldier not yet dead. An inch thick layer of steamed rice, over it a layer of curried meat. Repeat till the clay pot can take no more. Seal it with dough. Let steam do the rest. Okay. So to make my point, rather I'd like to throw this open. I want to know where is the link, but I'm pretty sure everybody can see the shift. So I'd like to throw this question open, if anybody can. Where is the link? What pieces this piece together?
The situation in Srinagar.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. It's that. True. But one part is just biryani being, it's actually the recipe of biryani and like how I learned it. And actually, I don't really know how it is made in Kashmir. So as a poet, I took the liberty, and this is how a Lucknowi pulao is made. So if you ever want to,
The title includes valley, and valleys generally
Yes.
refer to Srinagar.
Yes, the valleys, and obviously the haiku. So
Yeah.
What Kala said here, that if we consider Haibun as a Triveni with Saraswati, the mystical river being that title, then I believe this whole piece would fall apart one stitch at a time if we change the title.
Absolutely.
It's the title that actually it's the title that forms the fulcrum around which the link and the shift. You're expecting, the moment you say a kitchen in the valley, you're expecting some, a sense of violence. The only thing that I did with the prose, which I believe sort of links the whole piece together, is that there is an inherent violence in the way the recipe has been written. You can feel it in your bones, the way it starts. I think that is a link can be as tenuous as this, as flimsy as this, but your mind will do the rest. The shift here is absolutely wide, but put together it works. So yeah, I think this is the widest link which I have been able to make work, So that's about it. That's link and shift. Closer obviously might be easier to make. Yeah. Thank you, Shan. Nothing much to add. I'm being very tongue-tied right now.
A brilliant, brilliant piece. And there are lots of people who have been commenting on the thread as well, the chat thread. Akila, you want to share some of the comments?
Yeah. It's very difficult when such a large audience and you suddenly, you share a hype and you say, okay, now tell me what works and what not. And it's amazing, even look like Arvinda says equation on the border, perhaps also the similarity of culture. I think that's what happens when there is a haibun like this, where we are not looking at one haiku, one prose. We are looking at each segment of prose and haiku. And somewhere, as Paresh said, the fulcrum is a title, and you can take out perhaps each prose and haiku and read it along with the title, and you may still find some connect and still connect it with the other. Very difficult to get out. And it's amazing how Arvinder, I think she's gone to the second one where she says equation on the border, perhaps also the similarity of culture. Someone said crime and cooking. Yeah, Moshmi said. So I was wondering, that itself looks like a potential title here, crime and cooking. So yeah, it's Shalini, carry on. Yeah.
Sorry. So with that brilliant exposition on what a Haibun can do, let's have a look at what our other panel members have to say. So over to Kala. Is Kala there?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I had not. Okay. I really love the way you people are doing it. I never thought it'll bloom and it'll blossom into something so beautiful that people can take so much back from this session. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to go back to what link and shift is, for the simple reason that link and shift is something that you learn a lot in when we are writing Renko. Okay, now link and shift in Haibun is very loosely applied and is getting even more away from where it started. Okay, and since if I've started from 2005, I started writing haiku in June, July. In November, Norman Darlington came to the Yahoo group and said, who wants to start Renko? And you know me, I put up my hand and then 2 other people. So we were just 3 of us writing his Renko called Tripashwa, the 3 pages. And that is where I learned, and later I learned from John Carlin. Now I'd like to go to this very interesting thing, and then I will read my haiku, my Haibun. Okay. There are 3 different kinds of linkage. I mean, we're all talking about link and shift, link and shift. Now let's go deeper into what link means. There are different kinds of linkage that can occur between the prose and the poems. In his book, The Haiku Reckoner, John Carlin describes the 3 tiers of linkage: word object, core or content, and scent. Word links or object links occupy the lowest rank. They are forms of linkage predicted on the word choice or primary content of the verse. So when you take the verse, I'm just explaining it in my own words. I don't know, Geetanjali, you can sort of tell me. Taking the prose and the word link from that, or the object link, and getting your haiku, according to Basho, is the lowest form occupies the lowest rank. Next, he goes on to the middle rank, which is composed of core or content links. An added verse most often reads an extension of the action or setting of its preceding verse. Of course, here we are talking about Renko, but you can take it as prose and the haiku. Okay, so forming a distinct pair, they both come together to form a distinct pair. So that is the core or the content link. This he calls it the second rank. Basho places his own contribution to the development of linking technique uppermost, which he calls scent linkage. As you go deeper into scent linkage, it opens, it's beautiful. So let me just tell you what I understand. Scent linkage evokes a much more tenuous set of associations which are nowhere specified in the text itself. The reader is obliged to engage with the poem as an active interpreter. When I read my Haibun, I would like to point out where I've used scent linkage. Now, apart from the scent linkage, he also spoke about 4 other linkage that can be used. That is transfer, a connection based on the emotion evoked in the previous verse, that we do. Resonance, a connection based on some aspect of the sound quality of the preceding verse, which here you're talking about the prose. That also to some extent we do. Class, a connection based on social relations. We don't go near that at all in Haibun. Maybe we should start having a small workshop at Triveni Haikai, India, for the Haibun Gallery should have a small workshop or a small exercise where we use these link to the prose to the haiku. The last one he says is trace, a connection based on historical literary allusion. If you can understand what linkage means, then the shift becomes easier. And like Naresh said, it just throws open. You can shift into any of your spaces, into your comfort zone. The shift is quite simple, just that we make it complicated. The shift is to move out of the prose narrative, isn't it? I would like to read, Shalini, I would like to read the second Haibun, the knot. Now this, I didn't write it now. I wrote it nearly 8 years back, I think, and it was a memory of, I was just 13 or 14 when my father's cousin brother had come from the village, Shirgari. He had a robust way of talking, and he was loud, and he kept on beating his thigh, and all these things. And I was just looking at him, and when I wrote this Haibun, it almost wrote itself. It was not the actual words that happened that day. Of course, fiction comes in, and that is the beauty of Haibun. It allows you to take something from real life and make it your own. So this is what it is. The knot. Coming of frost, an old scar. I think I need it bigger.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, slightly bigger. Yes, yes, definite. The knot. Coming of frost, an old scar starts to itch. Where was I? Do not interrupt me, young man. I love. I lose the thread. I think I need it bigger, slightly bigger. Sorry.
Just give me 1 second.
Yeah, yeah.
Akila, I can get that going.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I think so. Yes. The knot. Coming of frost, an old scar starts to itch. Where was I? Do not interrupt me, young man. I lose the thread. Oh, that reminds me of a couplet by Rahim. Do not cut the thread of love impulsively. Once broken, it cannot be mended. And even if mended, the knot still remains. What a beautiful thought. Ha. Yes, coming back to my story, I told my wife that we should buy a flat in one of those housing schemes for senior citizens. Had we moved in there, I would have made my own friends by now, people my own age, and we could all sit and discuss the present generation, which is a gone generation. For nothing at all, they worry. For everything, they fuss. If a child fails in nursery, ho, 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 you tell me, how can a child fail in nursery? He beats his thigh boisterously. Now hear this. I read it long back somewhere. I forgot where. Old age looks back. Youth looks forward. Middle-aged looks worried. Laugh, young man. Where is your sense of humor? The biggest fault of mine was that I listened to my wife too much. I should have put my foot down and booked that flat for seniors. Now, see my predicament? My children don't want me. Look at the word daughter-in-law closely. Only by law, she's my daughter. Law means force. In force, can there be love? Leafless tree. The sun rises with a walking stick. Leafless tree. The sun rises with a walking stick. Tell me what course to take. What is your profession? A lawyer, you said? Very good. Oh, you have to leave? Yes, I know I've taken a lot of your time. It was a pleasure discussing things with you. I can tell you're a brilliant lawyer and you have my blessings for a bright future. I take his leave and head for the comfort of my home, 2 children and a dog. A peepal tree abuts a roadside temple. I think of Buddha. Now I'd like to go back to the first, the knot. Coming of frost, an old scar starts to itch. I have used scent. Scent linkage, which is not binding to scent as such, but more to something very elusive. An old scar starts to itch. And then the old man goes into his own thread, into his own thinking process. He's been already talking. That's why he said, where was I? Do not interrupt me, young man. And then he talks about, yeah, go to the second haiku. Yeah, I look at the word daughter-in-law closely. Only by law, she is my daughter. This is a quote that my grandfather used to, in the village, Shirgari, he was the only lawyer, and he used to keep saying, look at the word daughter-in-law. Law means force, and all this when I was just 16, 17. You know, all these things get into your mind, and then it just came out. Then here it is resonance. The shift is resonance. Leafless tree. The sun rises with a walking stick. When it's leafless tree, that means it's winter. And in haiku, we know winter is about old age and maybe death and all the things associated with old age. So leafless tree, the sun rises with a walking stick because it's a leafless tree. And when the sun rises, it almost looks like it's walking with a walking stick. You see the resonance of this old man where the children don't want to take him and he doesn't know how to go about it. And then he's talking to himself, maybe he should have moved into an old age home. And then tell me what course to take. And he suddenly sees that the other man who's come there is restless and he wants to leave. And he says, oh, yes, you have to leave. What is your profession? And just like my parents keep saying, you have my blessings, you have my blessings. I put that word, it just came into being. I take his leave. Now we go back to the person who's listening, or the narrator. Or to the person who's there. I take his leave and head for the comfort of my home, 2 children and a dog. That is the comfort we have. We need the family around us. We don't want to be left. A peepal tree abuts a roadside temple. Why a peepal tree? Why does that man think of the Buddha? Because again, we go back to our cultural references, and the Buddha got his enlightenment under a peepal tree. He got away from the dukkha. I don't know how many of you know, everyone must be knowing about Buddhist doctrine, Buddhist teaching. He spoke about dukkha, and he said, I'll show you ways to get out of dukkha. And even after so many years, 2,500 years later, here we have an old man who's still clinging, who still doesn't know the way out for the whole thing. A peepal tree abuts a roadside temple. I think of Buddha. It is also this man who has the comfort of my home, his 2 children and a dog, to think that, yes. So this is what I thought the link and shift could mean. I hope I made sense in this explanation. I made things easier for you all. Yes.
That makes a lot of, it's just opened up, like what we started off as a question and then definition and then example, where you have, And one point which you also mentioned, that when the link and shift works well, it just opens the piece completely.
Yeah, that line I didn't say. Now that we have the linkage, that we have the various linkage, we can work on the various linkage, and that would be something unrelated to the prose. Because we are taking the scent linkage, we're taking the resonance, we're taking the trace, which is about allusions and historical references, and then the shift becomes much wider into your own spaces. And then what happens? The Haibun opens out into various layers. Okay, yeah, Akila.
Yeah. So that observation Karen Harvey had on Parade's piece, where she said that she couldn't see the valley as Kashmir, right?
Hmm.
But it could be associated, but she saw as something else. I mean, if I could just scroll up and see, I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry, Karen. I think I just lost it somewhere where you
Do
had.
you want me to read it? Because there's a spelling error in there. Yeah, just a sec. Yeah,
I said that, Karen.
Yes. Thank you. I said that the reference to the valley wasn't obvious to me as an overseas reader because I don't know your culture, but that first paragraph where they mentioned the knives and the soundlessness of them made me anticipate possible violence, a sort of edginess there. So it wasn't a surprise when the haiku was referring to the war. There was sort of an emotional connection.
Yeah, so how she walked in, Karen as a reader walked in with her own interpretation there, where many of us saw it, where we could see the connection as valley. So her observation, which she had put in the chat section, just struck me when Kala was talking about what link and shift can do to Haibun. So yeah, beautiful. So at this point, I want Gitanjali to talk a little about in link and shift, of course, in piece of Haibun, the haiku is there, and how important it is that the haiku should also stand alone as an independent entity before it enters Haibun. That is one question. And the other thing which also connects to this is, I want to know, in fact, all of us would want to know, that we are reading now, when Kala has read, Paresh has read, you will also be reading yours, where you have multiple prose and haiku coming in a piece, right? So when we write, how do we decide what should be the length of it? How do we know that the piece works on a single haiku or with multiple haiku? Because haiku suddenly, zooms out to another plane, and then you have to come back with the next section of prose and everything working around the title. So little on the technical side, but yes, Gitanjali, we would love to have you.
Thank you, Akila. Thanks, Kala, for that fantastic explanation on linkages, because that's a lot of knowledge, that I mean, I wasn't aware of those things.
I think if you do Renku, you come to you become aware of that. I think it's just as simple as that. Yeah, continue, Gitanjali.
Okay, so I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm pasting onto the chat box rather a popular and famous piece, very useful, by Ray on why and how titles are important in Haibun. Right, so pasted so it's on his blog as well. So he talks about connotative titles, denotative titles, and also about flamboyant titles. Okay, so those of you who want to read it can just click on the link and then read it, because I think that really helped me understand the importance of a title in Haibun as well. To go back to your question a little, Akila, please forgive me. Before I read, I'd like to just quote. I'm kind of, I'd like to always quote to people, because then I don't have to say anything of my own, right? And anyway, the thing is, there've been lots of very senior people there who've already kind of there's no need to reinvent the wheel, I think. So okay, I'm going to quote again from Ray's essay. on in journeys, but this time it's a quote by Nobuyuki Yuasa sensei. Okay, so he is one of the people, along with Stephen Gale, who have been trying to keep the bridge between Japanese Haibun and the Haibun outside of Japan, right, going. Yeah, so he's trying to build some kind of a bridge there, or at least that's what they were trying to do, and they are still trying to do. And the Genjuan and the Kikakuza were part of that initiative. So Yuasa sensei says, none of the classical writers left any definition of Haibun, so we must satisfy ourselves with a vague definition like a piece of prose written with the spirit of haikai. Yuasa sensei also goes on to say, respect for nature, use of words in close touch with our everyday life, and avoidance of abstraction and emotionalism in search of objectivism are among the important elements of the spirit of haikai. So now this is more of a definition that holds good in Japan, right? And also the writers of Haibun in English in Japan, you know, you have the expat community as well as people who have kind of been living there for 20, 30 years. All of them write brilliant haiku. But like Kala pointed out, a lot of it is travel haiku because they travel and they write about it, right? It's not the inner journey, but the outer journey itself, right? The beauty of nature as well, which is captured there. And that's what traditionally Basho also did, and so did Saigyo, and all the older, even the lady writers, right? In the very ancient ages. Okay, so now I'd like to contrast this with what Geoffrey Woodward had written also about the definition of Haibun in English. He says, it has few, if any, hard and fast rules. Well-intentioned journal editors who solicit or reviewers who comment upon the genre may inform the reader that Haibun's requirements include any possible combination of the following guidelines: prose plus one or more haiku, use of present tense, use of first person, a subject chosen from one's common everyday existence, a revelatory or aha moment. Unfortunately, he also adds, unfortunately, the curious reader who conducts even a cursory review of the literature will soon discover that exceptions outnumber cases of conformity to every guideline cited. And that, moreover, the exceptions quite often are not weaker for this lack of adherence, which is where I'd like to go back to what Parish said, which is that one needs to experiment, right? And one needs to understand the rules, but also kind of mold it within that. So in the absence of a common rule, what is it that works, right? What is this link and shift that works, right? There are, I think, editors here of Haibun you could ask, but to me, what I do as a writer, right, is write about something that I've experienced and try to keep it real. And that for me works, right? It's not the case for everyone, but because again, it's art, right? It's art. So there are no hard and fast rules, and there are no definitions, right? That you can. So it really is has got to do with what one believes. So, okay, then what is it that I try to do that probably differentiates it from prose poetry or from free verse, or from, because we are saying that there are haibun without haiku, right? It's accepted, right? There are haibun without haiku. So in which case, what happens? So again, I think it is Geoffrey Woodward's definition. Again, I mean, he makes it very simple. He says one part of that prose will have the juxtaposition with the other, right? And so therefore, or one part of that prose will be lyrical perhaps, or like Paresh said, part of it will be fast moving and part of it will be slower, and so on. So there is that internal tension or the juxtaposition that happens, right? So to be frank, Akila, I don't give too much thought to what I write, keeping all these things in mind and then saying, okay, now I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and I think it's going to work. No, that's not what I do. I just write. Okay. And if it works, it works. At the edit level, yes, I go back and say, okay, this does not work. And so therefore I think, yeah, to me, it doesn't sound. But again, I think people who know me can testify to the fact that my work sometimes sits in cold storage for years. Okay. And then I just pull it out and I say, oh, this diary had this right. Oh, yeah, I went in 2012. So, okay, let me just look at it. So I'm going to read one of those pieces to you, which came out many, many years later. So, Akila, may I request you to share screen with the first one, It's called the Benediction. Please allow me to read this Haibun. It's rather short. So it's called the Benediction. At Ayutthaya, the seated Buddha has a serene smile. My Japanese co-traveler tells me that this temple, with an idol of Ganesha at the entrance, is well known for its cures of chronic illnesses. I stand to a side and watch my friend as she pastes gold foil onto the knee of the Buddha, hoping for a cure of her arthritis. Then she drops coins into each of the bowls that are arranged in a long line in front of the numerous Buddha idols. Resounding drums, the baby is weighed with butter. 3 years later, I make the trip with you. I peel the gold foil from its packet and place it in your tiny hands. When I ask you to put it on the Buddha, you paste it on his head. Your smile freezes when you see my eyes well up. Known stillness, the clatter of coins in this beggar's bowl. Okay. So, well, over here, I haven't really analyzed it, but since this session requires a little bit of analysis, okay, this Haibun probably works as something called a symmetrical Haibun. So in which case, there's prose, there's haiku, there's prose, there's haiku. So that's kind of symmetrical, right? But not everything I write is symmetrical. There are a lot of asymmetrical pieces as well. So you have a lot of haiku, and then you have a little bit of prose and so on. Okay, so whatever works is how I write it. So what I have tried doing here is to talk about, the blessing. And it could be the blessing. I start off with a blessing and a visit to the temple, but then finally, I think blessing is perhaps, interpreted towards the end in a different manner, right? So that's that. I leave it to the readers or the people who've listened to kind of interpret whatever they got out of this. But there is a bit of link and there's a bit of shift, because I've tried shifting between Ayutthaya and India and Ayutthaya and the time, right? The time, this slight leaps of time. But my point is, you don't have to really always shift away, right? You can also kind of just go deeper into a prose piece, right? Change the tempo or change the perspective and then come back to the prose, which is what I like to do a lot, right? So I hope I've kind of answered some of those, some parts of those questions. And as for the number of haiku, well, there are, basically, I think the writer gets to decide how many haiku, what they want to write, how they want to put it, and send it off, right? And if you're lucky, you send it to someone who'd give you some suggestions, right? If you're not, it's okay. I mean, you've still written it and it's still your piece, right? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, well said that one. It's up to the writer. And I think we learn more when we write more. When you write more, we read more. I think that is I think more essential, that we read more and then we write more. We try to write more And then I think then we develop our own styles as to how many should work, how many shouldn't work. But when we are new to this, any kind of art form, we have to starry-eyed, star-studded. We look at people and say, okay, let me try this. And, and then if it doesn't work, then we want to give it up. But I think one thing, as Gitanjali said, and as most of us know about her, that, and of course, Kala, Paresh, everyone, but Gitanjali especially, she's so humble, as she said, she'll put all her work in a closet and she'll wait for it to, bloom. And I think give it that space, what it needs to. And I think that level of patience, I think we need to learn, not being
I'm not sure I'd like everyone to be that patient. It's just that I happen to be someone like that. Yeah. So, okay. It depends whether you write because you want it out there, right? Every bit. But it's just that for me, it's not necessary that every bit of it is out there, right? So, but it's necessary that I write every day. That's something central for a lot of us. But it's just that some of us are happier to share that faster, but some of us like to procrastinate and keep it going a bit.
But I agree. I think when a poem lies for some time, the mind is thinking about it. And many times in the morning I get up, I've been working on it for a week or so and then left it and gone into something else. And then you say, no, this word doesn't work. Maybe this line is better here, or maybe the haiku sits better here. I think when we are in a rush, what happens? One thing, it's not edited well. And second, I mean, here when it comes to editing, I don't know whether I can talk now about editing, but I leave it at that. Akhila, please go on.
No, please.
See, editing is something, again, I come from, I did say it in my book launch at Jaipur Lit Fest also, because they asked a question specifically about editing. Editing is about taking away layers, isn't it? Taking away all the redundancies, making it much more concise, making it more sticking to the haikai spirit, or the haikai prose, as we used to call it when I came in 2005. Now nobody calls it the haikai prose. They all say prose. Okay, but when the minute you say haikai prose, it has so much more meaning, because then the flowery language doesn't come, the excess doesn't come. It is not just saying things because we are given 300 words to fill. Okay, now, when I gave my first concert, public concert, I had very good review by Datta Marulkar in Marathi paper, Sakal. And it was huge getting a review from him. And then he called something as emotional austerity. Okay. So, I mean, referring to Kumarji's and singing Kabir bhajans and Gorakhnath's bhajans, because I did sing them. Okay, so I rang him the next day and I said, I would like to come and meet you, sir. I want to know what you mean by emotional austerity. He said, okay, come over. I went over there and he said, if you see Kumar Gandharva sing a Kabir bhajan, it is bare, it is just out there. He does not decorate it with frills and tans and murkis and alapi. It is just there. It is almost like Kabir talking to us. Okay. And he said, that is emotional austerity. Then you take the other musicians now. He says they decorated, they all put so many ornaments on it, on a bhajan. So the core content is lost. You're again amazed by the language skill or the images or their takat in their musical knowledge. He says that is not what bhajan is about. You go back, drop all your things and just project Kabir. Emotional austerity. That was said in 2000. I came into haiku in 2005 and 2008 or 12 or something. This struck me, emotional austerity. I said, that is what we are trying to do in haiku and in Haibun and in Tanka And in all Japanese short form poetry, it is emotional austerity, where the I doesn't creep in. Of course, in Haibun and Tanka, we do say I, but it is not so much of the wordplay and the dexterity and how you want to put it, but it is more sticking to Makoto, the honesty of the experience, so that it comes off, rubs off on the person who's reading it. And it's not far to search. Even if you see Indian thought, if you see, you go deep into Indian philosophy, they say neti, neti, neither this, neither that. What does it mean? You peel off layers like an onion till the core consciousness of oneness or Advaitic non-dualism is there for you to see. That is what I think we are doing in Haikai literature. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I wanted to say here what you said at the very end, Kala, about the duality of things and bringing it to the singularity of things. Rusu from, so if let's say a Haibun is basically the conflict between the dualities, then what brings the singularity is the whole composition coming together. Is that how you are trying to define it?
Yes. The piece by itself can be talking about dualities. Okay. But how does the title, the prose, and the haiku come together? And how much of the duality is truth? I mean, in concise language, and how much is flowery language in that? That is what we're talking about. We're not talking about, in Haibun, you can talk about dualities. You can talk about two personalities clashing. You can talk about all that. But we're talking about stripping off the redundancies. Ultimately, what stands is the core idea of your Haibun and how you relate to the haiku and how the whole thing attaches itself to the mystical river Saraswati with the title.
Wow, that's so much to think about. I'm sure Akila has a fabulous question next. So I can see that question brimming in her head. So Akila, over to you.
I was wondering, we should make announcement for our next Tete, which should be editing. And I think that requires, a complete dedicated, an hour on that, because that's such an essential part of the craft when we're talking about craft. So I would like to bring Paresh here at the point of craft. We are talking about, emotional austerity. We're talking about honesty. We're talking about like how Gitanjali says that, when we write, right? We don't think about it and then we set it aside. And I want to bring in Paresh here because Paresh, your work has been very, very, very experimental and very fluid. You have, just taken the leap of transcending, experimenting, transiting from one level to the other, whether it is from the proper prose form of Haibun to, even the prose part is, of course, if I can call it lyrical poetry, right? So it reads melodious, there is a flow to it, and somewhere you have tried to blend it with free verse also. A lot of experiment. So how do you keep your emotional austerity and your craft and your love for it, Paresh? There's always an element of, fiction that comes in, even the prose part. And you still need to, and the amount of Haibun that you write, Paresh. So how do you do all this? Where is Paresh?
I stopped sharing my video instead of unmuting myself. That's okay. So, okay, full disclosure. My experiments are a cop-out. Okay. It takes a lot of emotional nudity, if I may use the word here, to be able to write without any crutches. Okay, to be able to actually write a Haibun that is absolutely true to your experience, you need a lot of vulnerability. You need to be able to open yourself up to, you don't even know who all. And so what I do essentially comes from a cop-out. Every experiment of mine, I have this need, obviously, all of us have this need to write, to express ourselves. A lot of it will remain safely hidden in a diary which drinks the moon every 28 days. But a lot of it will also go out. It will be read by people. And the cowards amongst us are afraid of being judged, are afraid of being found out. So they use, the other elements to put layers upon layers of obscurity and try to say to her, I'm sharing, I am sharing, I'm telling you the truth, but you have to work hard for it. You have to put in some effort of your own. And then once, I started off writing Haibun, how I was taught, and I was taught by Angel. Angel actually took me under her wing. We used to share 10 mails every day about, and a lot of it was body jokes, but some of it was actually about writing as well. Quite a bit of it was about writing as well. And I miss her terribly mostly for the body jokes, but for good writing advice as well. But very soon I found that, I don't want to keep, talking. I don't want to just be confessing myself every time I write out a Haibun. And those who do it, I have utmost respect. Utmost respect that you can do it day in and day out, but I could not. And that's where I started experimenting with form. And once I started doing it, it was, you taste it once and you just want to go. 83 reference, Charlie, I don't know. Anyhow, so, and as I said, in the past 6 years, the only thing that I've learned is that the form is very robust. You can actually play around with it to your heart's content, and you would still not have scratched the surface. How it works, I really don't have an answer. It sort of comes intuitively, that when you put this together, you are still not, crossing that very fine line where your Haibun stops being Haibun and starts becoming something else. It's very, very intuitive. I can't really place my finger, but I know when I've written a piece which doesn't work, I know. I think all of us do. Sometimes we fool ourselves by saying, no, it works because they're close, they are our fledglings, they are our children. So we sort of apne ko dilasa de dete, no, this child has potential, and and then we share it out with the world, not keep it with us, which we should. Because the one thing that I have learned, again, one more thing that I've learned, which Gitanjali also said, you keep a written piece with yourself long enough, and the chances it to be a gem. The secret ingredient to all good writing is time. Give it time. Give it in a time with your own thoughts, with a drawer, with other poems. It rubs off, you have 10 Haibun residing in your drawer, they'll all rub off each other, and you will come up with something very beautiful at the end of it. So give it time. Don't be in a hurry to share your fledglings. I have been criminally, I share this blame. I often share my work very, very early, and then I go back and I have even edited pieces later on which were in my book, and
Yeah.
so it just doesn't stop. But every writer, every poet intrinsically, intuitively knows what works, what doesn't work. So if you have done your bit of groundwork, your bit of legwork, where you have tried to read, 200, 300, 400, 500 Haibun, you have gone through the paces, you have gone through the journals, you have read the real Star Wars, right? When you've read them, when you've absorbed them, your mind has already formed a picture of the limits to which you can push yourself as a writer, because obviously you have intrinsic capability, and the limits to which you can push the form. And they are much, much more flexible and much more, they're there. I mean, you can't even realize to what limits you can push yourself to write. But you have to be true to what you are writing. You have to be true, and you have to be a very good critique of yourself. You have to look at a piece and tell yourself whether it works or not. You have to be very, very honest there. Once that honesty comes in, everything else will fall into place. And if not, then you should have a group of friends like we used to have, who look at each other's work and rap each other's knuckles and say, look, you might be a good writer, but this doesn't work. Go back to the drawing board. So that also helps. But what was the question again, Akila?
I was talking about I was talking about how do you balance your emotional austerity and your experimental, because you have been in this form for quite some time, and the way
close to 10 years,
the way you have experimented, trying to blend it with mainstream poetry, if I can say, with free verse, even and still being very true to Haibun, to what it stands for, to what you stand for, right?
I think it all boils down to that honesty that I said. I am very honest with my books. Very honest in the sense, I tell them on their face if they don't work, and I tell them that you need to go into the drawer, and you need to spend some time there alone, and you need to come back to me, and together we'll figure this out. It's all about that honesty. I have been very, very lucky that obviously first being taught by an absolute giant of the field. So I think that sort of short-circuited my learning curve of what a traditional Haibun is. So Angel, I can never thank Angeli enough for that. But I have been even more lucky that when I started reading out my works, a lot of free verse poets I encountered, I made friends with a lot of free verse poets, and their perspectives of looking at a work fueled me to go that one step ahead. I think the porous boundaries between the forms is what I have to thank for my own works, which are porous. Right. And you, I mean, without taking names, Akila, you know the people that I'm talking about, right? And I think one thing that I feel that the haiku world has been slightly insulated. And though sometimes it is an absolute delight to see with the kind of monk-like calm that Geetanjali brings, I mean, even the way you read your work is almost calming, right? So in a way, yes, you need that. But if the haiku world remains in isolation, the experiments would be far and few between.
Yes.
I have to thank the people that I actually sent out my work, those who sent me their work for comment and critique. I have to thank them for me being able to experiment so much with my works. That's about it.
And
I have a, sorry, Akila, go ahead.
that's it. Go ahead, Shalini.
There's a question that comes to my mind at this point, and that question is that, so there are people who write from the absolute experience itself, and there are people who write because there is a compulsive thing happening in their external circumference, not their internal, but their external circumference, which pushes them to write. So Paresh, while you belong to the second category of people, I mean, I see you as somebody who borrows from science, borrows from politics, borrows from social sciences, borrows from a veritable feast of ideas. How do you pick and choose your topics? Because there is so much. And you said that you write almost every day. Gitanjali also mentioned that you write almost every day. I know Kala for sure writes more than once in a day. So how do you guys write is my next question. And how do you pick up things to write on a daily basis? And at which point do you sit down and say, okay, this piece now needs to be edited, this piece now needs to be sent? Because I think from what I'm reading of the comments also, a lot of the questions seem to be around this particular space of ideas.
And I would like to, one thing is that we go back to tradition and we ask ourselves, what is tradition? Should we stick to what Basho had did, or should we move? And I've always been saying tradition, to be kept alive, it needs to be a flowing river. Techniques are her banks that hold and keep the art alive. But the creative spirit, without being restrained, should be able to move at will, like the meandering Ganga, to change course, to venture into unknown fields and discover new pastures. And I think that is what we are in our own, each person, each poet, even a beginner, even a student, even a child or a fresher into Haibun is doing. They are expanding. It is how much we are able to expand and things like that. But if you're going to stick to the tradition, I think it's stagnant. It's stagnant water. And I think we need to keep it fresh. And I think it happens if you see through it, and if you want to do something which is fresh and which is refreshing even to yourselves. I remember one painter in 2014. I met him at the Delhi school. I mean, at the Delhi public school at Kashmir. He had come for my workshop, and then his name is Shuddho, a Bengali from Delhi. Very good painter. He said, he was talking, he said, what we write today, what I paint today, I forget about it and start something fresh. I said, Shuddho, that is impossible, because I remember a piece and then I think about the haiku that would fit with this piece and Haibun and all that it works. He says, no, every piece has to be fresh. You throw away what you've done and start on a new canvas. And every time I write something which I've written before, yes, his thought says, start a new canvas.
Gitanjali?
Yeah, I mean, to respond to what Kala said, I kind of agree with that, you know, you can't just hold on to what you've written and just keep doing the same thing, but is also, I think it's also a way of seeing, right? Ordinary, I mean, if you find joy in the ordinary moments, then write about it. Or if you find something really strange about the ordinary moments, write about it, right? And it need not be a haiku or a senryu or a haibun or any kind of genre. You just write about it. And then as you're writing, you know, the haiku just comes, right? I mean, you write a few sentences about your day. I mean, at least it's a lot of times I just sit at the end of the day and, you know, kind of write about something that happened. It might be a perfectly ordinary day, but there, you know, it could be just the sky or the whatever it is, you know, maybe the desert rose just bloomed in my garden. I don't know, but it just sets you thinking, right? And or it just what should I say? It just kind of sets something going, right? And I think it's also about the way we see it, right? So do I have time to read another Haibun, Akila? Yeah. So I just want to, again, I want to share something with you. If you can share that document. It's an interesting story. That picture, you know, which is on the next page. Okay. So the picture, yeah. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. So this is, this is called the singing bowl. Okay. So we were part of the, lockdown and everything. And so that's when this whole piece happened. So it didn't wait 12 years to come out, but yeah. So what really happened is this thing has been sitting on my shelf, right? And there's a story. And so I just kind of, it really happened, but not in the way, perhaps not in the way that I've described it in terms of, but it did happen, you know, and to my eyes, this is the way it happened. So allow me to read this. So I'd also like to kind of bring back here that one doesn't have to write about, the things one doesn't know, right? About, cherry blossoms, if you haven't seen them, or about snow in in Canada, if one hasn't seen them, those kind of things. You can always write about, what you've experienced. And so allow me to read this piece. So this is, so it's called Singing Bowl. We recognize the object. It's the one from his travels to the hills one year. Despite the thick layers of dust and the patina, an aura surrounds the bowl. Mother washes it and rubs ash and brick powder on the outside. After a few hours, it's scrubbed clean. Slowly, a light sheen reveals itself. Swirls of burnt amber, a shattered sky. The bowl won't sing. Mother tries many times and gives up. When she hasn't succeeded, why would I? Yet, I try. And I get a tinny grate in response. We place it on the mantle and forget about it. And then one day, the girl with impasto dreams in her head, Ragam Yamuna Kalyani in her heart, and embers of stars in her earlobes comes freshly bathed. She picks up the brass ball, breathes from it, and turns the mallet in rhythmic circles. A soothing song of waves on the sand, dreamless sleep. A soothing song of waves on the sand, dreamless sleep. First rains, a green shoot from the split earth. Thank you. So, so this really did happen, you know, but I don't know whether you can picture what really happened, but that's exactly it. You know? So if you just see something the way you see it and put it down, I think, it has the potential of, ending up as Haibun, I think. So, yeah. Thanks, Akila. I don't know about, you didn't ask me about austerity.
You are
No.
right on your chance. You may speak now.
No. No, thank you. So yeah, that's it. Thanks. Thanks so much.
I have a request. Shalini wrote, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shalini wrote a piece, short piece for our TQT, the prompt that was given by Vivekanand, actor prompt. Can you read that out? I mean, is it okay to read that out here?
Mom, I can read it another time if you don't mind. I've got these three
Yes,
wonderful guests here. who have so much to share, perhaps on another occasion, if you don't mind.
No, I want these guests to hear this.
I, for one, would love to hear it, Shalini.
Okay, I'll try and see if I can find it on my...
Yeah, I'd like to hear it as well, Shalini.
Okay, on my phone then.
Me too.
Perhaps, Akila, you could carry the conversation forward while I look for the piece.
Okay. So while Shalini goes on her hunt, we are talking of writing and leaving them in the drawer for some time. Some of them, be a bad parent to that written child, saying that be in the drawer, you're not supposed to come out. And we're also talking about a practice of, trying to read daily and write daily, or at least write regularly. So I want to know from all three of you, how do you organize your work? Because at the end of it, I want my child to go out in the world, right? My written child. And, it finds home, somewhere in some lovely pages of a lovely magazine, right? So how do you organize your work? How do you structure them? How do you know that which journal might carry, this work, or these works are perhaps ready to fly out? How do you structure them? How do you organize your work? Because sometimes I think haiku, at least talking of my personal experience, I sometimes write on the go. And I've seen that, I've done that in Triveni Haikai Kala, let me admit it. The two of my haiku which got selected in the haiku katha, I was like, oh, did I write it? Oh, I didn't know. When did I write these? And I had just written it directly on, while reading the others, you just get something, okay, let me write. And it goes out like that. And I didn't remember, or should I say I was careless of not noting it down in a separate Word file or in a journal. And I was like, thank God it got picked up. Otherwise, I would have lost it somewhere. I don't know. So I think there's an essential, it's also a part of this entire writing process, right? How to maintain it, how to maintain a journal. How do you go about recording it, safekeeping it, like a bookkeep, and then it's ready to fly out?
See, what I do, can I go?
Yes, please.
Yeah. See, what I do is, yes, I do write. I do write in a file and I keep all my poems. But it looks like what got published last week on 19th April by Toronto Haiku, I think I've just written it and sent it off because I don't remember it all. I looked, I said, is it K. Ramesh by many chance? Is it K. Ramesh's work? And then I said, somewhere I remembered the inward flowering, somewhere I remembered the dash, and yet I said, no, it is my poem. Okay, so it happens. But generally, I think with so many things going on, and now I'm also into Haiga and trying to experiment with Haiga. When I take something, it's concentrated one subject. When I move, like for Haiga, I think almost every day I was working on a Haiga because I was experimenting. I was learning how to manage Canva. It was exciting for me. So all the other things took a backseat, except of course haiku katha, because that has to go on every month. Okay, but otherwise, I think for me it is not a regularized thing because basically I come from the music. I've had more music knowledge than I've had haiku, and in music we don't stick to one rag or one genre or one type of singing or one. I still remember, Kumar Gandharva, when he had Savai Gandharva concert, my Guruji told me, the whole time he was listening to one very famous musician sing that song. Okay, I even know his name. I forgot it. Okay, and she said the whole time I was listening. When he was eating, he was listening. When he was the whole time, and he sang the same composition at Savai Gandharva. It came out as Kumarji's composition in his style. And I think that is what we're all doing, trying to gain a voice so that we will know that it is our work. And ultimately, I think it happens. But many people are structured, but I would say I'm not structured at all. Absolutely not structured.
Gitanjali, how do you do it? Because I think you have the largest treasure trove of safe keeps, I'm sure.
I don't know. It's here. It's here. it's yeah. It's all over. But yeah, I don't know. See, it's the wrong question to ask me. I have it all over the place. It's in bits and pieces. When I open my handbag of 10 years ago, when I'm just going to throw it out, I find little pieces of, I go, hey, I wrote this. Wow, this sounds so much better than what I actually write now. So this kind of thing keeps going on. But however, the thing is, I think the basic question is, do you write because you want to be known for your writing, to be identified by your writing? Do you want to write because you want to communicate through your writing? Do you want to share some bit of your life with others with your writing? Or do you just want to write to stay sane, right? So it really depends on why you write, I think. Okay, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask, just like what Kala said, because if I write, I don't know, Akila, you were there at the session. In fact, you were the one who was anchoring that session with Michael, and Michael said you write about how many did he say? He said you write about 100 haiku and you'll find one that you can send off. I think that's my case. Okay, so I write. I probably have thousands of haiku lying somewhere, but I won't even know where. But the point is, it's not that I want to send all of them out. Okay, so some of them, most of them are imperfect, right? And I like that imperfection. Okay, so it's okay, because the idea is not to write something perfect every day. The chase, I have a very good friend who keeps telling me, don't chase perfection, right? I think many of us know him, so I'm not going to mention his name. But so that's the way it works, right?
Perfection doesn't exist. Where's the question of chasing perfection?
So yeah, okay. So what I mean is, in your own levels of perfection. I'm not talking about that perfect, but in your own levels of perfection, right? So you write a phrase, or you write, like I said earlier, you write something and keep it there. But having said that, before you send it out to someone, if you read it and you have it and you've written it, right, and you've kind of polished it, before you send it out to an editor, like I think Diana is here, for example, like there are senior people, Paresh, it's Kalas, of course, so what I'm saying is, before you send it out to someone, it's your responsibility to make sure that you have a system in place, whatever that be. It might be an Excel sheet, it might be whatever, right? Where you say, I have submitted A, B, C to X magazine or journal or anthology, and I don't go and send that A, B, C to Y to Z to my grandmother and to everyone else, right? Because I'm wasting the editor's time, someone else, right? Again, this is, I think, it's just basic courtesy, right? Of course, there are errors. We all make errors. All of us have made our errors. We kind of, say, oops, that phrase is something which I used before, and all of that, right? So you don't want to, and then you say, please, can you withdraw it or whatever. That's a one-off, is not what I'm talking about. But there are people who have no idea what they're sending to anyone, anywhere. And then not even whether it's your own haiku or someone else's haiku. Yeah. So while we are on the topic of Haibun, it's fine, because it's difficult to really rip off or to kind of, there's a lot more meat there, right? So you can't really make that mistake for yourself, right? You know that you're writing about something and then whatever. But whatever it is, I think maybe a basic word file. I think Paresh may be better at this because he's much more organized. So I'm going to leave it to him to tell us what to do. But what I do with the things I send off is I put it into, okay, from these pieces of paper, when I think there's something that's good enough to go into a word file, it goes in there, right? So if it says 2021, it goes into 2021. Okay, my word file for 2021. And then if I send it off to someone, I remove it from that file so that I don't end up sending it to someone else, right? Because simultaneous submissions or whatever. And if there's an idea that's being, repeated and you're flogging the dead donkey, then you just take off all those haiku and just put it, somewhere else. Don't let that go on, coming there and chew it. And, that it's not worth it. You move on, like Kala's painter friend said, start a fresh canvas, I think, right? And also, if they're published, I think technically they should go into another folder or a file or something like that. So I'm going to ask Paresh, okay, how does one do
No,
it?
but I do that also. All
Yeah.
the published ones are in a separate file.
Yeah.
So that
So-
we're not again doing
Yeah.
simultaneous public
Yeah.
submissions. That is
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah. And also the
Yes.
fact that, I think it helps that I don't publish much. So there's less to keep track of, I think. So, the minute you have 200 in a year that you're publishing, or 300 in a year, or, 10
Very
a day
difficult.
that you're publishing, then you are going to just go on quantity, and then you won't know whether you wrote it and your neighbor did, right? You don't know whether you wrote it or your neighbor did or your dog did, no? Because you're just going on writing and sending it off, right? So, yeah, so that's that. But anyway, I'm going to ask Paresh to help me with this one.
Right. Gitanjali, how you do it is exactly how it should be done. But generally what I do is there's one folder, and inside it, there are at least 4 more folders: publishable, published, to be edited, and trash. Okay. And the works keep moving between these folders. So each of my Haibun is a separate document. The document, the name of the document starts with in case I'm sending it to a journal, it starts with the journal that I'm sending it to. It moves to, sent out for publication wala folder. And once it is published, from there it gets moved to published. And to be edited and trash keeps on moving here and there, right? And that's about it. That's the simplest way you can organize. If you are tech savvy, you can have an Excel sheet and link all of these, because once you have a lot of work, you will suddenly start forgetting which year you wrote what, and then will be a problem. So you start Excel very beautifully links. You can link your documents with it, and there, if you click it, it'll open up the document. You'll be good to go. That's very good. Karen has a very interesting way. I'll read out what she says. With your permission, Karen, she says, I have an app called Color Note or Colo Note on my phone and tablet. They all sync with each other. I have filed for work in progress, new poems, calls for submission, submissions accepted, published. I move them around, which is, yeah. So that's how, but that's the least of your worry. I mean, if you are serious about your writing, you will find a way that works for you. It would be as rudimentary as putting color tags on your notebook, to as complex as creating an access file and calling upon a program to show you a poem with particular code words and proper. You can do whatever you want. Your primary responsibility to yourself is to write. And I was once asked that between my job and a dog and everything else, when do I find time to write? And I said that I write all the time, and that's really true. I'm constantly in my mind, there's something or the other related to writing. If I don't do that, I went through a dry spell of close to 1.5 to 2 years, and it wasn't because of lack of trying, because I was still finding time to sit down, open my notebook or open my PC and try and write. But at that time, I wasn't writing all the time, and I couldn't write anything. So you have to be in that frame of mind to be constantly mulling, constantly being in touch with your writer's side. Otherwise, I find it very difficult. For me, writing is not separate from living. If both of them exist together, it exists. Otherwise, one of them gets left by the wayside.
I find that when we comment on other people, when we give feedback, a critical appreciation of someone else's work, it helps us to come back to writing. The more we are closed and we don't want to give responses or we don't want to give feedback to anyone else, and we are tied up in our own oyster shell or whatever you want to call it, then what happens? You do have dry patches and you do have days when we can write. But I think on the days we have dry patches, just go out and help someone else polish their piece. And I think we come back. I mean, that is what it has worked for me.
Yeah, well
Well,
said.
it's like K. Ramesh always says, I always admire Mr. Ramesh because he says that, he writes, right? And he writes and he writes and he writes. So they said, how do you write? So he said, so much. And he said, if you just wake up at 5 in the morning and go for a walk and you'll write, right? Was his advice to us. So, yeah.
So Shalini, have you found your piece? Shalini?
Yes, I have.
Ma'am is
Okay, I'll go next then. If it's okay with everyone, please allow me to read next then.
Yes, please.
It's called The War Within. Hands that resemble the knobby grooves of a vipu, Kapnila. He digs his feet into the soft banks and feels the first light from the east warm his bare skin. The water swirls around his feet, slowly rising to knee height. He splashes his face, his arms, his torso, gracefully bends his body until he gets the stretch in the spine. He feels the aging knots unlock and then joins his palms together to bring his arms up, facing skywards. Water anoints his frame. His mind spools into her shimmering length. Muscle and memory, intimate with water, read pain and pleasure from a single music sheet. Water strider, the sound of a paddle slicing the insect dream. Water strider, the sound of a paddle slicing the insect dream. On the mud floor, his spine settles into its shape, growing roots. Solid trunk exposes the bare bark, gnarled, casting deep shadows in the hardened hollows of the body. Leaves sway with the wind. He focuses on a feeling, sorrow. The deer pierced by the arrow. Nesting season. The trees bend without bird chatter. Nesting season. The trees bend without bird chatter. The chutti artist reaches for the pacha. Her hands smear the green paint and gently apply it to his face, removing all traces of age and mortality. That's how God will emerge from man and he will become immortal. Storm. Someone always lifts the fallen leaves. Storm. Someone always lifts the fallen leaves. His face overlit by an oil lamp. She works on the makeup. Carefully, she arranges the rice paper on his face. She's familiar with nuance, the shift in his eyes, the flare in his nostrils, the quivering note of his cheeks that know how to navigate the navresas, bringing the audience to a point of climax, a point of no return. All of human experience reduced to a single point of expression in the body, the face, Moth wings. The sizzle in a burning candle. Moth wings. The sizzle in a burning candle. Time becomes irrelevant to the two as the long hours of preparation lead into the dance, the eternal battle of life losing balance and fighting for it. No matter whose story is being told, the world is always trying to find its way through grief. Madala Mentenda, thunder and lightning, a tree in flames. Madala Mentenda, thunder and lightning, a tree in flames. When the dance is over, he will no longer remain God. She will peel the chutti off his face, remove the pacha until he will become just a man. Transformed by loss and love, he will know her absence once her hands stop tending to his face. Flames, even the candle's heart, so warm. Flames, even the candle's heart, so warm.
Thank you, Shalini.
Beautiful. You read so well, Shalini. You did it very well.
Thank you very much.
Not only read, it has been written so nicely.
It's written so well, of course. Of course.
It was for the from.
Ma'am, you're on mute. Shivakami ma'am, you're on.
It was written for the actor prompt for the TQT, and I wanted you all to listen to it.
Thank you, ma'am, for the opportunity to make me read it. Akila, shall we invite audience questions now, because we're almost towards the end of our conversation today, and I think our audience also has loads to ask.
May I say something?
Please, ma'am.
Please.
Thank you very much. It has been wonderful listening to all of you and seeing how you work through your Haibun, and listening again to Kala. That has been wonderful. I have your book, but listening to you reading it is much. It gives me great pleasure. And
thank you.
And of course, it takes me back to Pune.
2019, when we met.
Under the trees there. And I'm in touch with some of the group.
Do you all remember she had come all the
come.
way from Mauritius to attend our Haiku Utsav in 2019?
It was
February.
wonderful. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And I wish it goes on and this becomes a regular. Will it become a regular feature?
It should.
Yes,
It
that's
should.
what we're hoping.
We have we have haiku and tanka also. So let's
That's
make
what we're
something
hoping.
work. Yes.
Yes. And as you said, we adjust with modernize, we change, we keep the tradition, but at the same time, to keep the art alive and maybe to keep ourselves alive, we carry on. We bring in the technology to help us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sushila.
May I ask a question, please?
Please go ahead, Anju.
Nice to see you, Anju.
It's nice. Great to see you
so
all too.
often
Thank
at the
you.
Haibun hut. Yes, I mean Haibun gallery. Yes.
Thank you for a very, very enriching and engaging experience today. I'm very, very new to Haibun, having started out only in Jan this year. So my question might sound very basic to you. Simplicity in language. I'm struggling to understand what is simplicity in language, because I find it a very subjective term. I haven't read any of the books that you have mentioned, but I've been reading on other platforms. Many are accepted, which seem too verbose to me, which seem very flowery to me, whereas some are very basic. So how do I decide how simple is simple enough? Because I come from free verse, from what is called mainstream poetry, so-called mainstream poetry, and I'm used to flowery language. So where do I stop at how simple is simple?
Well, for freshers, I tell them if a 6-year-old child can understand your poem, your words, they can read your words, it's simple enough. Whether they can understand the poem, in simplicity, you should have depth. And that is haikai. Not by complicating the words that you find depth. It should be so simple, and as you read, more and more it opens out and you find it. Something that is unforgettable. That is what simplicity is to me.
So even if I do see flowery language in other Haibun, on other platforms, which seem to have been accepted in spite of being verbose, that is what confuses me. Is it because of my lack of knowledge of their culture and their kind of writing? Or is it just I go on trying to be as simple as I can? Is that the what I should aim for? As simple as I can write?
It depends on which journal you're talking about. There are hundreds of journals which take all types of writing. So you choose the type of editor you like and you send it to them. That's about it. I don't know. Let others answer. I don't know about.
As far as writing simply is concerned, Kala has put it very beautifully. I'd also like to add that if you're using a word just to bamboozle somebody, I use this word bamboozle here, you're doing injustice. You know, if you can find the simpler words that can convey your meaning, but remember, each word has a very specific purpose for existence. Sometimes a simpler word may not be the right fit. It all depends on what you're trying to convey. You have to be very, very sure of that. Flowery language in any form of writing, not just haikai, it's better to move away from it. You just don't write to impress by the words you choose. That you can do in Word itself. You can right click and replace a particular word with as complex a synonym as you want. That's not writing. And when you look, editors at the end of it, like you said, there are verbose pieces. Editors at the end of that are also human. They may have seen something in that piece which to them was a piece worthy of acceptance in their journal. There are a lot of things that you consider. What does the journal stand for? What space of mind the editor was in? Poetry reading, poetry writing, poetry appreciation, everything is subjective. And each editor is human at the end of it. So like Kala said, build your own repertoire. Find the pieces that you like. Take inspiration from it. Everything that you find online an acceptance is not a hallmark of quality. Let me put it out very, very bluntly. An acceptance is just that, an acceptance in a journal. Just because your one work gets accepted, yes, it's something to be overjoyed about, but that does not guarantee that that piece is a quality work or that piece is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, thank you.
I would like to add one thing, Anju.
Yes,
just one point, a short point. The minute we start becoming flowery and verbose and trying to put too much details, then the unsaid is lost. Okay? The simpler we make it, The onset is there. Let me just give you a small example. It's not, I'm just thinking of thing. Supposing I say daybreak, an eagle takes off. It's sunset. The minute I want to fill it in with words, with details, with more specifications, I can say daybreak, the eagle takes off into the sky. The minute I say into the sky, it closes the poem for me. There's nothing left for the reader to imagine or to build on her imagination or to enter the poem. So I would say Haibun, when you start writing Haibun, go into haiku first. Learn what haiku is. It tells you everything that is there that will help you in your tanka writing or in your Haibun.
Thank you, Kala.
I may add, Anju, I think you kind of answered the question yourself. You said, the simpler form for myself, right? You said the simplest that I can make it. I think that kind of answered it. Exactly. You had the question and you had the answer as well, because I think it's about avoiding redundancy at one level, but the words we use really does depend on our own experience and our own vocabulary, right? So you don't try to bolster up everything with extra words. There shouldn't be an extra word. However, like you pointed out, there are very verbose prose pieces now followed by a haiku, which is being accepted, right, as Haibun. But again, you send the same thing to another magazine, they'll say journal, and they'll say, what is this? This is not Haibun, right? So basically go with your own definition. And the best way to do this, like I think it was Kala who said, and Paresh said earlier, keep reading, keep reading, which I'm sure you're doing already, because you already said you're going to be, you've been reading, right? So you just read and then, so you just keep reading. And then I'm sure you came up with the answer yourself. So a lot of it is something which, okay, I'm just going to ask you to read someone called Johannes Manchakar. Okay, Johannes Manchakar. He's no longer with us, but please read his Haibun. It's there on the net, right? And okay. I'm just sharing this because I think he used to write very simple. He used to write things, he used to leave out things, with a purpose, but he had such controlled, a controlled style, but it was so beautiful. Right?
Okay, I think they were shared on the Haibun gallery.
No, I think
perhaps a couple of them.
That's right.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
And his wife is getting out a book soon, so I think we'll have all his price work there.
Yeah. So just go onto the net and say Johannes Manchakar, and you'll find humor. You'll find the natural world. You'll find so many different things. So this is for everyone, because why I'm sharing this is I learned a lot of my Haibun writing by just reading his work, right? Because when I started, there were no workshops. One didn't know what Haibun was. One didn't know what haiku was. You kind of stumbled and somehow just figured it out, and that was the joy of the process, right? So I think
Yes, I'll do that. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Can I say something? It's not actually a question.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's not actually a question, but just a thought. Like, it was so heartening to know that you kind of write like 100 haiku, and then only one of those is, only one of those bursts. I was almost like giving up on haiku writing, but thanks to Kala pushing me, I'm still here, I'm still around. But what struck me was Akila said, she just wrote something on the spot, and so do we come to a stage like that with more writing, or how does it work? It's not actually a question, but
What's the question?
It's not a question as such. But,
Yeah.
you write like 100 haiku, and then only one of those works.
Basho said it. You write 101 might be a good, isn't it, Gitanjali? You write 100 haiku and one might be the haiku or something like that. So all of us, I think, say that, and which just means you have to keep writing.
Vidya, if I can just kind of add, out of that 100 haiku, right? I'm sure, I mean, all of us believe that all 100 work, like Paresh kind of mentioned it earlier. We kind of like to believe that all of those 100 work, right? But then, yeah, what you'd like to send out or what you'd like to work on later, the next step, that's where the edit. There was also a question on the in the chat saying, is there something like over editing? And yeah, I think that does exist,
Yes.
because we are our own critics. So when you write, I think it's difficult, but it's very difficult for some of us, but you try to switch off that correction mode, and then later on you switch on that correction mode, I think. But yeah, like Paresh says, if you have a group that can kind of read and say, hey, this works but this doesn't work, yeah, you might be a good writer,
That
but
helps.
rap, that helps, I think. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Shobana.
So I had a question
But
related
one thing
to
you
that.
can do is read your poems aloud if you don't have anyone. Even that, if you're critical enough, you'll know whether the poem sits well or not.
I had a question related to that, that are there lots of groups? I just read about Triveni right now, so I will definitely join Triveni.in. But are there lots of groups? Did you join groups to learn or critique groups to learn? Or
You mean you're asking me or you're asking someone else?
You, Kala?
See, in 2005, there was no group. There was no
Okay.
Facebook. There was nothing. And I couldn't afford any of the books from America. They were too expensive, Amazon. So we just worked on our own for a long, long time. It's much easier now. Now Facebook has plenty of groups which are doing very well.
글쎄, 아까기
I'd just like to mention, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this. Kala, a couple of years ago, I had first heard about the word haiku. I didn't know about it at all until
What's your name? What's your name?
Swati.
Okay.
I heard the word haiku first from you at Pagdandi many years ago. And then I never paid attention much until much later, like 2-3 years ago, I started.
Oh, you're a Puneite.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Hi.
So we've met at the Bookaroo also once.
Yes. Okay.
But thank you so much for introducing me to this field. I had no idea what it was before.
Join Triveni.
Yes, I will.
It'll be fun.
I messaged her that.
Okay.
She asked in the chat, are there any groups? What was she asked now? She had put in the chat. So I said separately, I said, come to Triveni Haiku. That's how we do everything now.
That is what is true on our heads the whole time now.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Hi, can I say something?
Yes, Shreya.
Hello, everyone. It was such a lovely session, and thank you so much, everybody. Shobna ma'am, Gitanjali ma'am, Paresh sir, Akila, Shalini, and Kala ma'am, of course. And I've made notes. I'm working on it. Soon you'll get a Haibun from me, hopefully, being the keyword. But yeah, and for everybody else also, I just want to say that I hope you also have your notes ready. So do write, and then of course share it for Haiku Katha, or go share it on Haibun Gallery, because we all just can't wait to read your work, and it will be lovely to hear from all of you. Thank you so much.
And a big shout out for Shreya. She's managing so much in Triveni Haikai, so many features she's there, and for the MailChimp and for the Instagram. We can't do without you, Shreya. Triveni can't. So
Thank you
without
so
you.
much, ma'am.
Thank you for all the help.
Shobana, are you there?
Thank you, ma'am.
I am. I'm here very much.
Come in, Shobana.
Yeah.
Come.
Yeah,
Same
I'm
thing.
here. I'm right here. I'm right here. Are we
Over
closing?
to you, Shobana, now for
The closing
yes.
remarks?
Yes.
All right. All right. This has been completely wonderful. Such a lot of learning. And thank you, Paresh, Kala, and Geetanjali for reminding us of how little we know and how much there is to know. In many of the conversations I've had with Geetanjali, she's always taught me what the meaning of the word sensei is: the person who's walked a little farther on, right? So thank you so much for being here, taking a good Saturday evening off. Thank you all members of Triveni Haikai India for making this place what it is. One of the things that Shalini and I discussed early on when we were putting the Haibun Gallery together is what we wanted for this was to, how can we find ways to improve scholarship in what we're doing? How can we find ways to, we are such a vibrant community, we believe in sharing, but how can we find ways to improve scholarship? Because good writing is born out of scholarship. And all of us know that some of the finest writers we know, fellow writers we know, come from the place of fine scholarship. So this was the purpose. And I think this tete-a-tete has definitely done justice to that. And thank you so much, Kala, Geetanjali, and Paresh. Paresh, very good to have you back after a long hiatus. We hope
very good to be back.
We hope you're here to stay. Thank you so much. And you've given us a lot of incentive to work on the subsequent tete-a-tetes. We hope to have these 4 times a year for Haibun Gallery. So thank you for keeping us on our toes. Thank you all for also being so diligent about your writing and about sharing on the Haibun Gallery. Many of you are regulars, but we'd love to see, there were 45 people here. Yes, I've been keeping track. So we'd love to see 45 people respond week after week. We don't see that. We'd love to see that, because so let's write and let's share and let's keep this momentum going. Thank you very much. We've had a lot of freshers, mainstream free verse poets. I saw Rehana, Baisali, although you all write Haibun, but you know, I mean, one danger of writing free verse and haikai forms is you're always looked at with suspecting eyes from the other faction, right? In the free verse world, people call me a haikai writer, and in the haikai world, I'm always called a free verse writer. So I'm sure a lot of us do face that. But it's lovely to have many free verse poets come here and join this, and we hope to see you all very actively as part of Triveni. And Geetanjali and Paresh, we really look forward to your guidance and your inputs on the Haibun Gallery. So we look forward to, we're going to hold you to this and look forward to your comments and inputs.
Thanks a lot, Shobana and Shalini and Akhila, for putting this together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. You all make it happen. So
could I ask something?
Please go on, Milan. Yes.
Yeah. See, I have been like practicing all these haikai poems, but Haibun is something very irregular or very like kind of this rustic to me. Kind of, I'm a rustic. Haibun is okay, but all I want to ask is that my Masterji Kala Ramesh is guiding me in so many poems and this and that. But could I ask someone in Triveni Haikai forum about this and that? I mean, writing about Haibun and all. I have written 2-3 Haibuns and published in Drifting Sands and etc. etc. But that's not enough, I think. And the one book that captures me most is Master's book, the first book that I bought with all those 10 years collections of books. And after that, it is Madame Savana's book, this Haibun book. And then I haven't booked any book of Paresh. Could you please kind of just give me the link of any Haibun written by Paresh, you know? And not only that, I think Triveni will be kind of this platform which includes what you call this Indian subcontinent, which includes us, the Chinky Passes. Am I right in the wrong sense, or am I wrong in the right sense? I don't know. Anybody?
Milanji, I think you are a true haikai artist.
Really?
Yes.
Of course.
You write. I've followed your writing for a long time. I'd only say, don't be intimidated by the Haibun form. You just write.
Okay.
Don't be intimidated.
Yes.
Right. Correctly said. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Master.
Absolutely.
Link to Paresh's
your
book is
Master Ji actually told me once. So, Milan, your Master Ji once told me I was very intimidated with Tanka, and she said that write 50 and then come back and say that you can't write. So, by the time I wrote 20th, I was already feeling that I can tackle the form. So, write 50 Haibun and then come back and say that you can't write. We'll hear you there out then.
Yeah, dear Paresh, one thing is certain, you know, I have gone to the wrong way, okay, for a long time. Now I'm to the right way. That long ways experience has more kind of give energy and vibes to making a perfect journey in the futures to come, in the journeys to come. I mean, so Paresh, would you kindly give me some links of Amazon? I mean, if you have published any Haibun books.
It's already there.
Yeah, it's on the chat. It's
Milan,
on the
I've
chat
shared it
box.
in the chat.
Milan, I've shared the Amazon link to Paresh's book on the chat box. You can see it.
But why don't you send it to on the MailChimp, Triveni's?
Sure.
Or say we could send it to
They have shared all these things on, I think 1 month back. It was completely Paresh, one whole month.
Okay.
Just go to the Haibun gallery and go to the old issues. It is there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Master Ji. Thank you very much. You are too absolutely beautiful in every way. Okay. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, Milanji. There's one question from Pradnya. Pradnya, do you want to ask it? And then I think we'll close. We're way beyond. We've overshot the time. So just one question, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Yeah, so my question is, like, can we write an essay or information in Haibun form? Like, some of the Indian traditions don't know the all countries. So probably if we can say a Rangoli or something, there are many forms. Like Diwali only know that lights, but it's not. We do different kinds of food, and the other country people don't know that, So that kind of essay can we write in Haibun form? Oh, sorry.
I think compared to haiku and tanka, Haibun has more Indian stuff than any other. So people have been writing a lot about all that.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, I think I do think that you can, you draw on your Indian traditions to write about it, draw on whatever experience to write about it. However, I think if it's a personal take, it kind of works even better, is what I think. I mean, than just a description. Diwali is a festival of lights, and therefore, instead of that, perhaps you put in a little bit of your personal take as well, and I think it will work really well.
Pradnya, the one that Shalini shared, I think is a classic example of what you're looking for. The Haibun that she shared. So if you could request Shalini to share it with you, or Google it. It won an honorable mention in the British Haiku Society Awards. You could probably look at that. That's a great example of exactly what you're looking for.
Okay, thank you. This is really helpful. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to stop the recording. So in case we want to say anything off the record, it's fine. So I'm just going to stop the recording. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Give me the link. Give me the Amazon links of those